I see in you a silent struggle, as if deep within your soul there is a dark room where whispers echo, whispers you try to ignore but cannot escape. They appear in your dreams, in your unexplained anger, in the sadness that suddenly surges. That is your shadow, the hidden part, yet alive and demanding recognition. You might think this darkness only brings fear, but remember, in mythology, every hero must enter the monster's lair before finding the treasure. Without the shadow, there is no growth. Without the night, there is no dawn. The shadow is not merely what causes you pain, it is the very material for you to become the hero of your own story. So, do you dare to look into the mirror, to clearly see both the bright and the dark faces of yourself? Do you dare to step into the forest of the unconscious, where the hero's journey begins with the very things you fear most? Dear friend, I wish to begin where every true journey starts, the acknowledgement of the shadow. Within your soul, there is a mirror, but not an ordinary one. It reflects not only your appearance, but also the parts you often hide. When you look into it, the image that returns is not just the bright face, but also the dark patches, the distorted lines, the gazes you do not wish to acknowledge. I sense your silent fear, the one you try to conceal beneath layers of social masks. Perhaps at times you feel inexplicable anger, or you find yourself swept up in envy, weakness, or shame. These emotions are like whispers echoing from the depths. They do not vanish. Even if you turn away, they are the shadow. And at this point, many people flee in fear. But my dear friend, I invite you to pause, to look directly, and to acknowledge, yes, this too is me. And remember, no hero in Greek mythology or in any religious tradition has ever avoided descending into darkness. Orpheus entered the underworld. Christ walked into the desert. And in the Red Book, I too ventured into the deep forest where strange figures appeared. The shadow is the gateway, the threshold every soul must cross. The rhythm of the journey's beginning is always slow. Like a deep breath in the darkness, you do not yet need to understand everything, nor resolve it immediately. The first thing you need is the courage to acknowledge the shadow's presence. When you do so, a strange calm will spread, as if the forest of the unconscious has recognized your presence, and the door begins to open. So, I ask you, when you look into the mirror, what do you see behind those eyes? An enemy, or a forgotten part of yourself waiting to be reborn? Dear friend, when you have dared to look into the mirror and acknowledge the shadow, the door has already opened. Beyond it lies not a bright room, but the shadowy forest of the unconscious. You step inside, and immediately the familiar sounds of the outer world vanish. Here, there is only the rustling of leaves on the damp breath of the earth, and vague shapes moving through the mist. This is the realm that Greek mythology calls katabasis, the descent, where the hero confronts death to be reborn. The shadow no longer appears merely as a fleeting darkness. It begins to take form. It might be a stranger, fierce, or a distorted version of yourself, with sad eyes and a hoarse voice. It steps out from the deep forest, not to destroy you, but to remind you, you are not whole if you do not acknowledge me. At this moment, fear rises, but remember, every hero has trembled before the beast. In the Red Book, I saw terrifying figures, snakes, monsters, and even angry gods, but I understood. They were all parts of me, fragments of the soul waiting to be reclaimed. The shadow is not the enemy, but the gatekeeper, the guardian of secrets about the strength you have disowned. Do you see the paradox? The place where you feel weakest, most ashamed, is precisely where the treasure of courage lies. The Greeks told of Hercules, he did not become a hero by avoiding monsters, but by facing and subduing them. Likewise, you cannot grow your soul if you abandon the shadow in the forest. Pause and listen. What is the shadow asking you? Does it scream, accuse, or simply invite you to recognize a neglected aspect? When you are ready to stand still in the forest, instead of turning away, a shift begins. This is the second step on the inner hero's journey. Dear friend, when you have courageously lingered in the forest and no longer flee, the shadow ceases to be just a vague shape. It draws closer. You feel its breath, its eyes gazing at you, no longer as a threat, but as a long-lost brother. And then something strange happens. It begins to speak. Its words do not resound in your ears, but echo from deep within your heart. You have denied me. It whispers, I am the anger you suppress, the desire you reject, the weakness you hide. I carry the burden you dare not acknowledge. This is the voice of the unconscious, the voice of the shadow, which I analyzed in Ion. This moment is often the turning point in many patients' dreams. I have seen the shadow appear as a fearsome stranger, but when the dreamer listens, its form changes. It may become a teacher, a guide, or even a friend. This is the transformation of the archetype. What first appears as a monster is, in fact, the gateway to the soul's growth. Recall Prometheus. The Titan was chained not for malice, but for daring to bring fire, the light of knowledge, to humanity. Your shadow is the same. It is the fire bearer, but its flames burn in the darkness, making you afraid. Only when you dare to converse do you realize that within its threat lies creative power. Try asking it, what do you want from me? The answer may make you tremble. I want you to see me, to acknowledge me, to integrate me into you. And when that happens, you begin to reclaim the lost fragments of your soul. This is the true heroic moment. Not slaying an external monster, but bowing down, listening, and reconciling with your own darkness. In the journey of individuation, this is a stage of dialogue, where one learns to hear the voice of the unconscious stepping out of the deep forest, not only with fear, but with a new understanding that the shadow does not destroy you. It completes you. Dear friend, when you have listened to the shadow and dared to let it speak, a slow but profound transformation begins. The darkness is no longer an enemy, but a living material waiting to be integrated. This is the moment when many of my patients' dreams depict images: a beast turning into a loyal animal, a dark abyss becoming a spring of pure water, or a fearsome face transforming into a wise teacher. The unconscious speaks in symbolic language. Your very self is rediscovering the strength hidden within the shadow. In Symbols of Transformation, I describe the hero's journey not as destroying darkness, but entering it, embracing it, and letting its tension open a new path. Here, your shadow carries qualities that consciousness has rejected. Anger can become courage. Desire can turn into vitality. Weakness can become compassion, this transformation forms the foundation of the hero, not a hero of violence, but a hero capable of standing in the tension of opposites without collapsing. In mythology, Hercules was not mighty merely for his muscles, but because he faced 12 labors, each forcing him to confront a part of his own darkness. Likewise, your journey is no different from Hercules' trials. Every fear, temptation, and weakness you once avoided, when recognized and integrated, becomes a piece of armor for the inner hero. Imagine you step out of the forest, no longer trembling. The shadow, instead of haunting you, now walks beside you as a companion. With each step, you feel a growing light within, not because the darkness has vanished, but because you have learned to carry it in your heart without being consumed. This is the art of individuation, letting the darkness become the solid ground for light, birthing strength from fear and wholeness from brokenness. And in that moment, you realize the hero is not one without darkness, but one who has reconciled with it, turning it into an ally. The shadow, once a burden, becomes the silent flame illuminating your path. Dear friend, having passed through the darkness and turned it into an ally, you reach the threshold of a return. But this is not a return to where you began. It is a new return. A return to yourself in wholeness, like a spiral bringing you back to the same point, but at a deeper, brighter level. In countless dreams I have heard, this moment often appears as a flame igniting in the night, a golden door opening in the forest, or a circle of light surrounding the dreamer. This is the symbol of the self, the center of the entire psyche, the archetype of wholeness. When you reconcile with the shadow, you have placed one foot in the orbit of the self, where there is no longer division, where the small ego ceases to struggle, and the greater eternal self leads the way. In Ion, I wrote that the human journey is one of tension between opposites, light and darkness, consciousness and unconscious, masculine and feminine, life and death. But no opposite is destroyed. All are preserved and reconciled in the image of the whole. The true hero never lives by light alone. He learns to hold both darkness and light, like yin and yang embracing in the Taoist circle. You may feel a peace gradually spreading, not because the darkness has vanished, but because you have integrated it into the light. Now, anger is no longer a threat, but strength to protect what is sacred. Fear is no longer a chain, but a humble reminder. Weakness is no longer shame, but a source of empathy. This is the deepest reconciliation, where every fragment of the soul finds its place in a complete circle. Imagine standing on a path, the light ahead illuminating, but shadows still lingering behind. You no longer need to flee or fight. You stand at the center, still but steadfast. And in that stillness, you hear the whisper of the soul. You have become yourself. This is the final invitation and also the beginning of a new journey. The journey of living in wholeness, and with each passing day, the darkness will continue to knock. The light will continue to guide. But now you know that both belong to you, and in their union, you have become the hero of your own story. Dear friend, the journey does not end where the light first dawns. If you stop there, the darkness will once again become a stranger and a threat. Thus, your next step is to practice dialogue with the shadow, to not only see it, but hear it, acknowledge it, and let it become a source of energy for daily life. In therapy, I often advise patients to keep a dream journal to record fleeting images, strange faces, unsettling situations. For every symbol in a dream is a whisper from the shadow. When you sit down, write slowly, and dare to look at the fragments of the night, you have begun a silent dialogue with the unconscious. You can also try another practice. Imagine a dialogue. Close your eyes. Envision stepping back into the forest where you faced the shadow and invite it to sit before you. Ask it, what do you want me to know? What gift do you bring? Listen to the response, whether it comes in words, bodily sensations, or fleeting images. In that dialogue, the shadow transforms from an adversary to an ally, from a threat to a strength. In alchemy, this is the stage of conjunctio, the union of opposites. In daily life, it is when you learn to use anger to protect what you love or fear to keep you humble. The darkness is no longer excluded, but becomes the soul's most loyal companion. Dear friend, when the shadow has been recognized, conversed with, and transformed, the journey does not stop at the boundary of the ego, for the personal unconscious is always a tributary flowing into the ocean of the collective unconscious. Each step you take into your own darkness is also a step forward for humanity, because deep down, your darkness is not separate from the collective darkness of humankind. Imagine, in the mirror of the soul, when you see and reconcile with the shadow, that mirror shines brighter, and like light radiating from a small lamp, those around you receive its reflection. A person who has reconciled with their darkness rarely needs to project it onto others. When anger is understood, you no longer burden others with it. When fear is embraced, you no longer demand the world be your shield. This is the silent but enduring ripple of individuation. In mythology, the hero does not become a hero solely by conquering their own darkness, but because that light illuminates the community. Prometheus stole fire from the gods, not to keep it for himself, but so humanity could warm and light their way. So too with you. When you turn the shadow into an ally, you offer others the gift of a whole, compassionate and steadfast presence. Thus, this journey does not end in solitude, but in communion with the world. The shadow that once confined you in fear now becomes the source of strength that allows you to stand firm in storms and extend your arms to others. You have become a flame, not of destruction, but of life, passing from your heart to the hearts of humanity. Dear friend, after passing through the darkness, after meeting, conversing, and turning the shadow into an ally, the journey does not culminate in some glorious peak. No, it brings you back to daily life, to meals, work, family, the seemingly mundane things that now carry new meaning. In every myth, the hero, after slaying the monster and finding the treasure, returns to the community. This is the archetype of return, a necessary cycle of the journey. But the hero is no longer the same as when they departed. Their eyes are brighter, their heart deeper, their steps steadier. The shadow no longer lurks behind, but stands beside them as a faithful friend. Returning to ordinary life, you carry the understanding that fear can be a teacher, anger can be strength, and darkness can be the ground from which light grows. The small daily acts of conversation, decision, a moment of silence now become opportunities to practice reconciliation, to continue individuating with every step, every moment. In the Red Book, I describe this return as a spiral. We do not abandon the world to enter eternity, but bring eternity into the world. In Ion, I wrote, the self is the totality encompassing the ego. It does not replace daily life, but infuses it with meaning. Thus, the return does not end the journey, but begins a new way of living where every ordinary day can become a sacred ritual. Now, you no longer need to seek light in some distant place, for it has been kindled in your heart. And when you go to the market, when you work, when you sit alone in silence, that light remains. It makes you an anchor, a source of solace for others. And so, your personal journey extends into the collective. The small light of one soul becomes part of the shared light of humanity. Dear friend, I leave you with a final word, not as an end point, but as a longer breath in the endless journey of the soul. For the journey of facing the shadow and rediscovering the light never concludes in a single chapter, but continues through many lifetimes, many events, many layers of meaning. The shadow will return. It will take new forms, perhaps in sudden anger, a strange dream, or an unnamed emptiness. But now you know it is not an enemy. It is a messenger. It comes to remind you that each time darkness appears, a new flame awaits to be kindled. In the Red Book, I wrote, you will meet these shadows again, and each time they return, they bring a piece of the soul you must embrace. This is the essence of the path of individuation, not a destination, but an endless flow where every crisis opens the door to deeper wholeness. Let your daily life become a sacred space, where you practice dialogue with the darkness and share its light with the world. Through your authentic presence, you become a hero without need for glory. A silent hero carrying both darkness and light in your heart. And finally, I whisper to you as a blessing, be brave and keep walking. See every dream as a map, every fear as a key, every stumble as a gateway. This path will never abandon you. It is you, and in your fidelity to this journey, you will discover that darkness and light, in the end, are but two faces of the same life,